I'm Lara Gastinger, and I'm a botanical artist, and I'm based in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I now I do botanical watercolors and nature journaling. I think it was always like ever since I was a little kid, but I must give my parents credit. We went to these environmental summits through National Wildlife Federation, and I met some amazing botanists and Illustrator there, and I learned how to draw plants, identify plants, and from then on, from those teenage years, I was pretty much hooked on plants. And then from then, I went on to I was always trying to figure out how to combine science and art together. And so I came to UVA, and then I was like, I will be an architect and a biologist. So I worked for a landscape architect for a while, and then I wanted to do more field work. And after I went to Virginia Tech, I heard about the Flora of Virginia project, and they needed a botanical illustrator. So I started doing that, and then from there, that sort of launched my career into becoming a botanical artist and illustrator. I feel like I'm becoming a specialist just in the Piedmont and the Blue Ridge of Virginia. This is such a rich area that I feel like this is just where I kind of want to specialize. That being said, I do love traveling, and I draw things that I find other places, but it's always sort of overwhelming to have to learn a whole nother suite of plants, but then you can find the ones that are in the same family and stuff like that. But I do love the Blue Ridge and Piedmont of Virginia the best. Well, one of the most amazing moments was when I hiked up Mount Washington in New Hampshire and got to meet this rare endangered plant that grows only like in one spot, and that grows there on that mountain. And that for me was very mind-blowing, that this little plant could endure that habitat and that I got to like meet it. Other things is during the Flora of Virginia project, I got to go on trips where one of the botanists discovered a new plant, and so got to name it. So that was really thrilling. And then we also came across other rare plants. And also just being able to experience a intact, sort of pristine habitat without invasive plants has always been a very big treat, very special. Yeah. Awesome. I would just take my journal out into the woods and sit down next to the plant and draw it. And then if time was limited, I would take a photograph of it and then consult the image back at home. If I was to do a portrait of a plant or a formalized painting, like a commission, usually I purchase the plant, somebody gives me the plant, and then I do sketches. So I sketch it out on paper with pencil, and then I use really detailed paintbrush with a very fine tip, and I just start putting in washes and then building up the layers with lots of time. So it's different than most watercolor because it's done on hot press paper, which is smooth, and you can get this really nice detail. And let's say it's very controlled and very little water. So it's almost not even like watercolor. Sometimes people think they're drawings. Yeah. In my journal, I was showing people how there's always mistakes, but I feel like it's always a learning thing, and even if the mistake's there, you can learn from it, you can change things. Now in some of my formal paintings, I have held my brush so tight that like it would accidentally like dropped and I made a spot. That's happened, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you can try to remove it. Sometimes you can paint another leaf there, and I've done that before. I don't get too worked up about the mistakes because I figure it's just part of the process. Yeah. If it was really easy, then everybody would be doing it, right? We had people that were looking at the black-eyed Susan and finding the miniature little flowers in the top ring that they didn't know were there. Some people found inchworms crawling across their flowers, and people learned how to really see closely, like the fuzz and all the textures on the leaves. And everybody said they came away knowing their plant more than they'd ever seen. So it's just really teaching people to really be mindful and just see. And especially like with our native environments, natural environments, we need people to be observers and document. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, my favorite season is probably fall and winter, because I love it when things are not necessarily blooming, but when things are going through that transition or a change and that decay into like something else, like the leaves are starting to fall apart. I love that part. And just it reduces all this greenery that we see now down to this stark, elegant beauty of plants that, you know, there's something about winter that is really speaks to me. And plants really, you can see like this skeleton, the structure of the plant, and all their different architectural structures, yeah. But with my biology background, my message is just like, hey, look at these plants out there. Does this, and I would just want to inspire people enough that when they see my work, it like makes them look a little bit closer or pause, and then want to make their own discoveries. But I do feel like I'm a documenter of nature. In some ways, I would have loved to be on those early expeditions. Not the tough conditions that they had, but I would love to have been the person that, you know, was documenting and capturing all these things out in nature as sort of a teaching thing. But so I feel like I'm doing that today. And with my biology background, I feel like it's definitely a teaching thing. Like, look at this. This is so beautiful. And I want to hold it up, you know, to people to see. It's just a joy to like combine my art and love of art and science together in this way. Yeah. Awesome. Start with a journal and start observing and asking questions, and learning botany is helpful. And then, because we need people out there observing, documenting, and knowing what's around us now. I feel like it's less frequently that kids are outside. So just encouraging people to start drawing and observing plants. Yeah. Awesome. This is something you can do to be engaged with plants that doesn't have a screen, that is just very pure and just very basic, that anybody can do. Pencil, paper, the plant's there, and you can make your own discoveries without all that technology.